Welcome to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Susie Vidori, where I teach you the tried and true secrets to writing fiction, nonfiction that are going to wow your readers, broken down step by step. We're going to explore writing techniques. I'm going to show you a glimpse behind the scenes of successful writers' careers that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. And I'm also going to coach writers live on their pages so that you can learn and transform your own storytelling. Whether you're just starting out, you're drafting your first book, you're editing, or you're currently rewriting that book, or maybe even your 10th book, this show's going to help you unlock the writing skills that you didn't even know you needed, but you definitely do. I'm so looking forward to helping you get your amazing ideas from your mind onto your pages in an exciting way for both you and your readers so that you can achieve your wildest writing dreams. And you're going to also have some fun doing it. Let's dive in. I welcome to the show today April Dávila, who I was introduced to by our mutual friend and colleague, Candace Coakley, who said, "You've got to have April on your show. Your listeners are absolutely going to love her message." And she was not wrong. I'm so glad that we were able to have April on the show. We had an amazing conversation all about writing. April discovered quite a lot of techniques when she was writing her award-winning novel, 142 Ostriches, which came out in 2020 and became a bestseller. She was putting together this connection that she wasn't really aware of at the time, that she was meditating and using mindfulness and learning about that practice, and it was helping with her writing. And now she coaches writers on how to do the same. April Dávila is an award-winning novelist, writing coach, and certified mindfulness instructor. Her new book, we talk about at length on the show, Sit Right Here, 6 Mindfulness Practices to Help You Write More and Suffer Less, Don't We All Want That, is coming out with St. Martin's Essentials in July of 2026. But she talks about all of the techniques in here. It offers a transformative path for writers seeking focus, ease, and consistency in their creative work. She is speaking our language. It blends insight meditation with craft fundamentals, and April guides writers through 6 core mindfulness practices, which she talks about on today's episode, that help overcome resistance, deepen creativity, and sustain joy in the writing process. She also leads the Sit Right Here mindful writing community, where writers gather weekly to write with calm and clarity. Let's dive in with April. You are going to learn a ton. Welcome to the show, April Dávila. I am so excited to have you here today and to talk about mindfulness.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we're going to dive right in. Sit right here. And I want to say this for the listeners because I had seen it written a few times and it wasn't written the way that the actual title of this book is, with periods between sit and right and here, which, I mean, I'm an editor, so I love to geek out about these things, but
Yeah, yeah.
it has so many meanings. What a great title. How do you feel about the title and how did you come to it? What does it mean? Like the double
Ye-
entendre?
I love it too. And I had when I originally pitched it, I pitched it as Scribbling Buddha because I liked the idea of like this little mindful person just scribbling away in their journal. But the publisher was worried that people would confuse it with like a drafting, but like an image creation drafting. And it's definitely nothing to do with visual art. So they proposed, my company name is actually Sit Right Here. And I don't even remember how I came up with it. I mean, those are the 3 ideas. The sitting, of course, is the meditation, writing is the writing. And here I have a community that I host that meets every day. And here to me has always been community. Like here is where you find your writing people. So Sit Right
Yeah.
Here. It just kind of came
That's
together.
really cool. And for me, seeing it with the periods that way changed the meaning in that here kind of meant presence, being
Yeah.
mindful. And I mean, I'm gonna dive into this. I'll let you talk about the mindfulness, but to me, it just was sort of all encompassing. A great title is amazing. And I
Thank
didn't even
you.
say the subtitle, although I did in the introduction, which is 6 mindful tips to help you write more and suffer less. And that's
Yes.
what all our listeners are here for. We want to write more, and we want to suffer less, and we are going
Right?
to dig in here and let you know how to do that. Okay, so when I looked at Sit Right Here, there's this old adage that says, just sit your butt in your chair and write, and that's how you
Yeah.
do it. How do you feel about that advice? Because I'm conflicted on it, but How do you
I
feel
think
about that?
ultimately you do have to sit down and do the work. But I think if you get that advice on its own, it's not enough because and this is one of the things that I've found in working with writers and bringing mindfulness into the practice is that we can read all the craft books. We all like we learn as we go. We know a lot of stuff, but it doesn't when you sit in front of your computer and you're staring at a blank cursor and it's just like teasing you. Like all of that advice doesn't mean anything if you freeze, right? And we freeze for all kinds of reasons. Or we suddenly remember we need to organize our closet, or oh, the kids need me. I'll go do something, make a sandwich. Or it's hard. It's harder than people realize to simply just sit down and do the work. And if you don't sit down and do the work on a semi-regular basis, like you're not getting any work done.
Absolutely. And I think, that sitting your butt in the chair and write the darn thing, it kind of misses the point that there's a lot of thoughtfulness behind and thinking and planning behind writing. And I like to share that when I was a business executive and I would write on Saturdays and sit at Starbucks for 8 hours while my husband brought the kiddos somewhere to do something. And it was not my job to do that on the weekends because I was writing my book. And I appreciate that so much. But I could write days that were 10,000 words, right? And that's
Wow,
crazy. And
that's
and
amazing.
please, if you're listening, do not compare yourself. That was like once a month or once every 6 weeks, maybe even once every 2 months that I got to do that. And so I thought, once I finally my writing career took off and I quit my day job and I was like, all right, well, I can do that anytime I want, right? Because I was doing it pretty consistently. And I was like, yeah, I can write 10,000 words a day, but I couldn't because I
Yeah.
hadn't done all that 8 weeks of thinking and planning and sort of absorbing. And so like you sit down and then you're
Yeah.
missing, like you can't just write it. I mean, some people pants it, but then you've got to do a lot of editing work afterwards in the process. So yeah, it was an interesting and humbling experience to try that because
For
that's not
sure.
my. Okay, let's dig in here. Why did you actually write this book?
That's a great question. So, because I'm a fiction writer, that's my love, and I'm actually excited to be getting back to my fiction now that I've done writing this nonfiction book. But I really struggled with my fiction. For 8 years, it took me to write my first book. I went around in circles. I was writing short stories that were getting rejected left and right, just nothing was working. And then in 2016, something shifted and everything just kind of started happening. Like, figured out the novel. I found an agent. The book got published. It won an award. My short stories started getting published. I was nominated for a pushcart. I was so excited about that. And so
Of
so when I
course.
looked back, like what changed in 2016? I realized that that was when I started meditating regularly. And at first I dismissed it because correlation is not causation, as we know. But the more I thought about it, the more I started to realize that there were some actual very concrete things that my meditation practice had brought into my life that had helped me be a happier, more productive writer, to write more and suffer less. And so realizing that I doubled down. I went back to school. I got a 2 year mindfulness teacher certification program through UC Berkeley. And then I started bringing it to my coaching clients and started seeing how they were benefiting from it. And then I was like, okay, I need to share this more widely. So I put together a proposal and I pitched it as a book, and St. Martin's Press bought it, and it's coming out in July.
So exciting. July of 2026. So, but it is up for pre-order now. We'll let you
It
know
is
at the
up.
end of the show how to get it.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So that sort of leads into my next set of questions. And I couldn't wait to dig into this because you are a book coach and a writing coach, and as am I. And so listeners of this podcast are pretty familiar about what we do there, but you are also have this certified mindfulness instructor certification. So what people let's look at that for a second. What is that? And what would people stand to gain when working with a mindfulness instructor? Like, let's separate it for a second
Yeah.
and then we'll talk about how the two of them work together. What is that exactly?
It's funny, no one's ever asked me to talk about them separately.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah, so it's interesting. Mindfulness practice in and of itself, I think I mean, it has so many benefits and science is
Yeah.
discovering more and more all the time. But for me, one of the main benefits has been the pause. And people, if you practice meditation for any period of time, what you'll start to notice is that when something happens, like a stimuli comes to you, instead of just reacting, there's this, and it is a fraction of a second, but you're talking speed of neurons, right? So all it takes is a fraction of a second for you to be like, and instead of just reacting, being like, what's like, okay, that really pissed me off. Like, what am I angry about? And just having that tiny little second of reflection changes everything. And like in my personal life is where I noticed it first, where like my husband and I would be talking and he would say something and where I would have in the past flown off the handle and gotten really pissed off, I'd be like, that really pissed me off. And then I could say like, that really upset me. I don't like the way you said that, or like, or maybe like I'm going to own my part and my family history is like prompting me to respond in a way that I don't really want to. So let's talk about it. But none of that is possible without that tiniest little bit of a pause. And it comes in, it keeps you from picking fights at the grocery when someone takes the last loaf of bagels or whatever. It helps me be a better parent. That little pause is everything.
Okay, and that's the mindfulness piece. And that's funny that nobody's asked you to do that. I don't want to rush ahead. Maybe this is the pause because I think part of what I love, yeah, right? It's a little meta. Part of what I love bringing to this podcast and bringing to our listeners who are coming to writing from all different walks of life is a little bit of history of our guests. How did you get here and what are you interested in? And because a lot of them are also exploring how does writing fit into my life and also how can I fit more writing in or how can like what are the other careers associated and all the things. So I thought that was really fascinating because I hadn't heard of a mindfulness instructor before and I think it's really cool.
Thank
So here's
you.
the question. So here I'll be typical for a moment. I'll be like every other podcast host that's ever hosted you. How do you combine those two things together? The writing coach. And now that we actually understand, because if we don't understand it, how can we
Yeah,
combine them, right? Like you were studying mindfulness and finding it's helping your writing and also meditation. And then you were helping your coaching clients and realized that you wanted to dig in and learn a little bit more so that you could do that in a mindful way.
yeah.
So now they're combined, but how do you see them? How do they fit together in your writing coaching practice?
That's a great question too. How they fit together in the practice. A couple of ways. The biggest way is that I run what I call my mindful writing community, and we meet every morning at 9:30 Pacific, and we meditate for 15 minutes, and then we write for an hour, and then we just kind of hang out and be writers together for a few minutes. And I don't lead every meeting. I lead 3 meetings a week, and then I have a couple other writers who've been through the same mindfulness training program as I did. So we have similar training, similar style, but we lead 7 meetings a week, and that's probably the
Wow.
biggest because it really is like show up, put your butt in the seat. And the great thing about it is that like it doesn't matter what's going on in your life. You don't have to be ready to write. You just have to get there, turn on the camera, and be like, all right. And then the 15 minutes helps you go from whatever's going on in your life to ready to write. And that's the whole point of the way that we've set up the community. So that's on the day to day of how I bring mindfulness into the writing. But I also have courses. I have something I call Path to Publication, which has courses incorporated into it. And those are all, I try to really make all of my class things, all my teachings, 50% craft, 50% mindfulness. So, for
Mm.
instance, one of my favorite classes to teach, and there's actually a chapter on this in the book, but it's on writing sensory details. And when I teach the class, depending on how long the class is, I'll actually take the class outside and we will meditate with our eyes closed for a few minutes and listen to all the sounds. And then we write. Like, what are all the sounds that you heard? And then we talk about, okay, how do you make it? You don't want to put that kind of extensive detail into actual prose. Like, if you spend 3 paragraphs talking about the sounds, you're going to lose your readers. So then we talk about how do you take like just the perfect details and like put them into the writing. But we start with a little bit of meditation. Then we do like an eating meditation. We'll eat a strawberry and we just close your eyes and for 3 minutes try to just taste that strawberry. And then right. What does it taste like? What does it remind you of? And then again, how do you put that into the fiction? All of my classes are probably, I really aim for like a 50-50 writing craft and mindfulness in different ways.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, you are on the Show Don't Tell Writing podcast right now. So
Yes.
talking about sensory details is of course one piece of Show Don't Tell, and it's of showing what your characters' experiences are if you're writing fiction or your own experiences were if you are writing nonfiction. But I love to, when I speak to, I teach a lot as well, and I teach a lot of kids because I do a lot of school tours,
Fun.
residencies. And I like to tell them because they're often taught that sort of sensory thing first. That's what they're working on in elementary school and junior high and in high school and middle school. And I like to tell them that they use all the senses, but use it sparingly because we don't want to always enter a room and have everybody licking the floor to see what it tastes like. And usually they laugh at that.
That's a good one.
Yeah, but definitely a few times in a book we can taste something, but we
Oh,
certainly can't do it all the time.
it's one of my
Um,
favorite things. Whenever there's a meal in a story, I get so I like will take myself, I will find that meal somewhere in Los Angeles and I'll go out and like have that meal and just take all these notes. And it's one of my favorite things about being a writer. So you can call anything research.
Absolutely. Or I used to be in a lot of book clubs, less so now. I work on 100 books myself a year, like with 100
Wow.
different writers in some way, shape, or form, whether that's through a group program or editing. And so it's hard to get pleasure reading in. And I read like
Mm,
everything that I can in the craft, that especially anything that's doing really well in a genre. So it's hard for me to actually keep up with a book club these days, but I used to be in three or four. And whenever it was my turn to host, I would go out of my way to be providing the food that was in the book.
nice.
Get creative. I would get creative if there was no obvious choices in the book. I would try to be creative, and they're always like, "How do you think of these things?" I'm like, I don't.
That's just
Um,
fun.
I'm a writer. That's what we do, right? So when you say, we write, 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 and then we have too much, because this is where
Yeah.
people often find show don't tell really cheesy. They say, but Susie,
Mm,
I find it really cheesy. It's too much. I read this book. It was really boring because they included that 3 paragraphs of description. So
yeah.
what rules, if any, do you teach that you can pare that down? Do you have
Oh,
those?
I mean, I'm not big on rules.
Yeah,
Big on guidelines, and there are definitely things
sure.
that tend to work, right? They're made to be broken. If I had like an umbrella guideline, it would be less is more. And I think whenever I teach that writing the census class, there's always usually a guy, I don't know why, raises his hand and he's like, well, I'd much rather have a book that people can just read easily and not get bogged down in all the details. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
me too. Like, I think we've all read that book where you're just like going to skip 3 pages because it's all about like the warp core drive or like the fabric of the dress or whatever it is. I'm like, I don't care. Get back to the story. So for me, that's my guiding principle is less is more. And when I do that exercise with them, well, I have them write and write and write. And then we really do what we look at is like read through it. And what's the one sentence that's like, ooh, like I've never heard it said quite like that before. This is the good sentence. And then that's the one you use in your story. And so,
Absolutely. And sometimes it does more work. Like maybe it
yes,
tells you who they are as a person, or it
exactly.
plants something for the mystery later, or it pick the one thing that actually works hard, right?
Well, yeah, and so the example I often give is like if you say the young man like ran out of the house and got in his car, the missed opportunity is there is like what kind of car? Like a young man who gets
Hmm.
in a beat up 98 Honda is a totally different young man that gets in a 2025 Tesla. And
Yeah.
all you have to do is tell us what kind of car it is. And you already in your head, you have two different young men in your head just from that, like what car is he driving? And so putting in little details like that can make such a difference to without bogging it down, right? I didn't spend a paragraph describing the car. I just told
Not
you what it
even more words.
was.
Not even. I mean, in that case, it might be a couple more
It's like
words because
two more words.
yeah, right. And it's so worth the time. And thank you for going off on this tangent on Show Don't Tell. I will take you there any time that I possibly
Oh,
can.
that's
Um,
key stuff. I love it.
yeah, I like to tell this story in my second novel, The Westwoods. I had a moment, and it was probably on one of those coffee shop days because I was still working full time as a business executive when I wrote that book. And I hadn't decided something, right? Like, and so I
Hmm.
was writing my way into it because I hadn't decided. I sat down, I'm trying to get my words in. And the character was going into a building that they'd never been in before on the campus of the boarding school that they go to. And so I had not decided what the building looked like on the inside. So while I thought about it, I wrote her walking down the pathway and going up to the building. And it was probably 3 pages. And I'm not even lying about her walking up to the building. And obviously that was just me stalling because I didn't know what was she got inside, and it's not how I usually write. And I knew it was like excessive and terrible. And so when I went back through and before I sent it to the publisher, to my editor at the publisher, I cut it down to a paragraph.
Yeah.
And what was funny was this entire book of 75,000 word book. And he flagged that paragraph and he said, I've been working with you a long time. This is the best paragraph you've ever written. I,
Wow.
I want to know why. He's like, what did you do? In some ways, it was probably terrible because it stood out.
Yeah.
And in other ways, he was like, that was like money. what did you do? And I'm like, oh, well, I actually had 3 pages of crap. No,
And
what
you
was going
brought it
to
down.
happen? And that's what I did, right? So sometimes we get stuck on word count or we get stuck on progress and we want to keep everything, but is what you said
Yeah.
earlier.
I have a similar story in writing my first book of like I really wanted the character steps out on the patio and once I wanted it to be the moment where she decides she's staying. And so it was sunrise and it had to be really beautiful. And I actually went out to the desert and got an Airbnb and I woke up at sunrise and I wrote for like an hour over the whole course. I pages and pages. And I think it ended up being 3, 4 sentences in the book, but I love that those 3 or 4 sentences. I'm like,
That
yes, they're
moment. And
like,
it needed to be so like it just needed to be so sharp, right?
yeah,
That one
needed to
moment. And I love,
get
I
it.
mean, any excuse to rent an Airbnb
Right?
anywhere and go
Everything's
and write.
research.
Right. Everything's research. I mean, when you love to write, you love to write.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to sit right here.
Yes.
In the book, you talk about 6 key practices, which are, I won't put you on the spot, make you come up with them yourself. Number
Thank you.
one, get writing. Number two, embrace discomfort. Number
Yes.
three, keep going. Number four, explore emotions. We've been talking about that or a little bit. Number five, engage reality. And number six, okay, you're going to have to correct me if I can't pronounce this, but find equanimity. Did I do it?
Yes. You
All
got
right.
it.
Okay.
Yes.
So how did you come up with this framework and walk us through like how they all fit together? Why
Yeah.
these 6 things?
So those were the 6 things that I really, when I looked back on what had changed in my writing, when I really like put some thought into, those were the 6 things that rose up as being the things that I had changed with mindfulness. And the order actually took me a while to settle on. The first one was easy, the get writing part, because that's what I do with my writing community every day. We do that meditation, and it's called insight meditation, sometimes vipassana. But the idea is that you just quiet your body and you choose an anchor, usually the breath, sometimes the sound in the room, whatever it is. It's something to focus on. And when you notice your mind wanders, you just let that thought go and come back to the anchor. And then the beauty of this is that you practice that for 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is. And then you switch to your writing and you start writing. You make the writing your anchor. Thoughts still come. Thoughts like, shouldn't you go organize your closet? Or this is pointless. Who do you think you are writing a book? Like whatever, you just notice those thoughts and you say, thank you, thoughts. You can go and you just keep writing. And it is a total game changer. It allows you to drop into this state of flow. And people who come to my community are like, it's so fun when they first come to be like, oh my God, I got so much writing done. I'm like, yeah, welcome. Like, this is how we roll. And so I knew that had to be the first chapter. And I knew the last chapter of Finding Equanimity, because that chapter is really about kindness and being kind to ourselves and recognizing that this is a journey that's going to have a lot of no's. It's going to have a lot of hard feedback, rejections, and how do we weather that and like keep ourselves happy and healthy. So I knew that was going to be the last chapter. And then the middle four, I kind of rearranged a few times. I couldn't quite decide what order. But the second one, getting comfortable with discomfort, once you started writing, what often happens is you'll get to a point in your story where you have to write an emotion that as humans we don't like. Like we don't like being sad, we don't like being afraid, we don't like feeling lonely. And so often that's where people, without even realizing it, get up and go empty the dishwasher. It's because like,
Or
oh,
they
that
skip or they
I
write
skip
around it.
it.
Do you see this?
Or
They
right
skip
around
it. And
it. Yes.
sometimes I see, one of the tenets that I teach in show don't tell writing is don't skip the moment. Like I don't want to hear about the clown that was walking down the street and slipped on the banana peel and you're laughing so hard you're crying. And I'm like, I don't get it. And you're like, you had to be there, right? Hard moments. They include them in their books with 2 characters talking about what happened. And I'm like,
Yes.
bring us there, make us feel it. Right?
Yes. I like to use the example of like if you're in a car accident on the way to work, when you get there, it's going to be like an hour long tale. I was driving and there was rain and he cut me off. It's like this whole story, right? And you're going to tell like 6 times and everyone's going to, what happened? If you jump forward 2 or 3 years, that whole thing is summarized like some jerk sideswiped me on the freeway. Done.
Yeah,
Like no emotion,
totally.
nothing interesting about it. It's just a thing that happened. But yeah, that distance is such a, yeah. And writers, and the
But
reason we
but
skip
bring us
over
to
is because
don't
it's hard.
But writers have more choice than they think, and it's not
Yeah.
always the first thing that they think of, which is what newer writers come to easily, right? That's what we end up with
Yep.
cliches. It's not because it's said all the time. It's not even because you've read it in books, because published books don't have that in them lots of times. But it's the easiest way to write something that people do first. But if you were to take us into that car, if it's important for the story, now I will
Yeah.
caveat it only if it makes sense and it shows us something about the character and it changes their life in some way that we're actually tracking, then bring us into the car and be in the accident
Yes.
and have you feel like you hit your head and feel the stress of being late for work while you fill out the accident report. Like all of those things might be important to the story and might change or show us something about the character that we get if we're just gossiping at the office and telling this bullshit.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
But
a good
yes,
point.
distance
Yeah.
is great. I mean, show don't tell is all about your zoom lens, right? Like you zoom
Yeah.
in, then you're showing, and you zoom out. Maybe it's I got
Well,
sideswiped 2 years later, right?
but sometimes I think the reason people subconsciously avoid zooming in is that they are emotions that we don't like to have.
Yeah.
And so mindfulness a lot. And so one of the tricks I teach for this, and because mental discomfort is actually really closely wired neurologically to physical discomfort. I mean, it's the reason that like if we remember a loved one or a heartbreak, we still feel it physically in our bodies. And so one of the things I do, you can train yourself, but to be comfortable with minor physical discomforts. And that trains you to be comfortable with minor mental discomforts and allows you to not even think twice about jumping into a really hard scene. And even subconsciously, it gives you more ability to write heartbreak and loneliness and fear and all of those things. And that practice is really easy. It's just about meditating without moving at all. We do a short meditation, just 10 minutes of like, try not to move. And as soon as you do that, you almost instantly get like an itchy nose. You're like, yeah, okay, but I just got to move this one little thing, like my foot. But when you can like train yourself to not move and be okay, like, oh yeah, that itch on my nose is uncomfortable. Can I take one more breath and be with it? Can I take one more breath and be with it? And like just see if it will fade, if you can wait it out. And it trains your mind to be comfortable with mental discomfort, which makes you a better writer.
Well, that's so interesting because we're coming into this discussion with the word mindfulness, which talks about the brain, but many of the examples that you're actually sharing are about your body and
Oh
the
yes.
rest of your body. And it's not just your brain, right? And that's
Right.
fascinating because
That's
it's
a
not
very
just about
insightful.
you're connecting that. Like it's all connected, right? It's all connected. And when we write, if our characters have that connectivity as well, it feels more real and we're not always even aware of it in ourselves. And so being aware of I had a brain scientist recently on the podcast, which was fascinating. I'm like, yes, it came
That's
through.
so great.
And I was like, I am totally interviewing a brain scientist. Go check that out. We'll put it in the show notes. But it's just fascinating to me because I want to read something that somebody who studies this brain and body connection because they're going to understand things about people's human behavior that we don't know that we
Yeah.
do. And
Yeah.
that's what being a writer is about, observing the world and capturing it in a way that's like, oh my gosh, that feels so true. Um,
Yeah. I love that.
okay. So switching gears for a moment, let's talk about your fiction writing. Your debut novel, 142 Ostriches, it was published in 2020 and it did win some awards. And how many of these practices did you use when you were writing, or how many of them came later and you wish you'd known? You talked about there was sort of an aha moment in
Yeah.
2016, but how many of these went into it and how many have sort of come about since as you studied it, you wish you knew them all?
Yeah, it's a little complicated because I started meditating in 2016. I didn't realize until I looked back around 2019
Hmm.
the benefit that it had had. But I'd been struggling with the book for since 2010. In 2016, things started to come together. I finished it in 2018. It was published in 2020. So I didn't realize all these things were at play as I those last 2 years of finishing my book. But when I looked back on like, why did I suddenly like, was I able to do the things that I had been trying to do for 6 years with no success? And that was when I realized, oh, maybe the mindful. And then, and then I had to kind of piece together, was that really it? And it was the whole journey began. But I was not aware of the fact that these things were benefiting me yet. They just kind of were quietly behind the scenes. And then, yeah, and then the book came out in 2020. And I literally, a week before the lockdown was my launch party. And everyone was like talking about this weird virus thing that like, it'll blow over. And so I didn't, wah, wah. So I didn't get to do like the whole book tour thing. And so I just got back to writing. I just kept at it. I knew I have so many books I want to write. I did do a lot of virtual things. I did a big campaign to zoom into book clubs, a lot of virtual book clubs because everyone was home and
Mhm.
it just kind of worked out. But it was weird. It
Actually,
was a
that's when
weird time.
I I talked about my book clubs earlier, and that's when I quit all my book clubs. I
Yeah,
tried for the first like 3 or 4 months, and then I was like, the last thing I want to do from 7 to 9 p.m. at night is
is
sit
beyond
on
Zoom
Zoom
again.
and talk
Yeah.
about books. It feels like that's what I do for a job, right? I
Yeah,
sit on Zoom and talk about books. So yeah, and I was getting like Zoom fatigue and Zoom headaches and stuff. And so yeah, I miss my
yeah.
book clubs. I should go back now that they're all and actually some of them stayed online because what
I
happened
like
was
in
they
person.
oh, me too.
Person's
I
so much
will.
better.
And actually, some of my writing groups that I used to participate in and present at regularly stayed online or at least are a hybrid. And you could still go to the room with some people in person, and then you're looking at a screen because we picked up members remotely and they wanted to
Mm.
stay remote or they weren't local. And so, yeah, a lot of things changed, and I prefer in person as well, for sure. Okay. I also noticed that you talk a lot about writer's block on your site, and you've got some courses and some programs around writer's block. Can you say more about writer's block? Because this is something that I hear a lot from
Yeah,
writers. And so if you've ever experienced it, what do you say it is? And there's different things out there. They're
yeah.
all right. But what's your experience with writer's block and how do you get through that with writers?
Yeah, and I think this is chapter 3, the keep going chapter, the because we all get stuck sometimes. And for me, I don't believe in writer's block. I think writer's
I
block
don't
is a
either.
term that, okay, and that's always a little
On my word,
sensitive
I'm not going to contradict
sometimes.
you here. No, but when you work with hundreds of writers, you start to
You
recognize the
start to recognize
patterns. Yeah.
that it's like a catch-all phrase that people use when they're not sure what's keeping them from writing. And so my whole take on writer's block is like, let's figure out what's keeping you from writing. There is something, or else you would be writing. And it's not some magical thing. You're not cursed. It's not, there is something. And I actually, if folks go to my website, there's a little banner at the top for a free writer's block lecture that I give. I think it's like 10, 15 minutes. But I list off all the things that I've ever, in working with my clients, seen manifest as quote unquote writer's block. And then how do you handle it? So it could be simply like burnout. Like you, I worked on my first novel while I was working full time and had two little kids. And there was a point where I opened my laptop. I went to the coffee shop, like my husband took the kids, and I opened my laptop so excited to like get so much work done. And I almost threw up. It was like morning sickness. It was the weirdest thing. I got so
Like I just need
nauseous.
a nap or something.
Oh, I just was like, I couldn't even look at
It's
it. I was
physical
so,
though. Look at this
ugh.
again. It's your brain and your body. Like your body's like, okay,
Nope,
brain, you might be excited, but I just can't, right?
just can't. And that was actually the day I started outlining my second book because I was like, okay, brain, we set aside this day to write. I don't want to waste it. And I get that I like message received. You don't want to work on that right now. But I knew I couldn't quit. I was too far into it at that point to quit. But I just switched and I started outlining book two. I just had fun for a day. And that kind of soothed that burnout sensation and allowed me to come back to it, was refreshed, like whatever the next time was I had to write. I don't remember exactly, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's so
But
many
it's
things.
it's true. I mean, we think of writing as a cerebral event, but there's a lot of things. I'm a very intense writer. I still binge write because I do so many other things. And so I set aside, 1 week and I write my own stuff or whatever that is. And
Nice.
and it's intense and it is very physical, whether you think it is or not. I have experienced twice now carpal tunnel while editing because I just keep hitting the down key in my own books, not other
Mm-hmm.
people's books, but my own books because you're just scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. And so I've got like systems now, like I always have a touch screen. I can scroll on my touch screen. Like I have other
Yeah.
ways around it to prevent physical harm from writing too intensely, right? Like
Yeah.
this is a thing. And I also suffer from eye strain as an editor. And
Yeah.
like, these are all real things. And so it's interesting that your body told you that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pay
Loud and
attention to
clear.
your bodies, guys. Don't ignore those signs.
Yeah.
Set your environment up. and listen to it, right? Take care of
Yeah.
yourselves as you
And
write.
then the other thing is that, like, so closely related to burnout sometimes is just tired. I mean, burnout and tired are closely related, but I feel like tired can be like if you're a new parent. I've talked to so many new parents who are like, "Well, I feel like I should be writing more. I'm not at work. I'm not doing anything." I'm like, "Are you kidding? Like, you
Yeah.
created a whole other human, and now that little human is not letting you sleep." And it needs constant care. And sometimes you just have to lower the bar and be like, okay, once a week, 100 words. Like, just to kind of keep touching into it while you go through a challenging time. Because sometimes writer's block can manifest as like not so much like the physical burnout, but just that like you just don't have the time. You're taking care of things that are important. And there will be periods where you have to just do less and be okay with that. And then there'll be periods where you can do more, where you can take a week and write 40,000 words and like, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to plan for that. You can't just do it.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, there's so much I want to say on that book.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at what stage, like what stage of writer, if you're a listener out there, what stage is your book appropriate for this sit right here?
Oh, it's really appropriate for any stage writer. New writers will find ways to get focused and actually get words on the page and lessen self doubt, lessen intimidation or imposter syndrome, or those things that can tend to choke us up as new writers. But then also, it doesn't really matter how long you've been writing, you're going to get rejections, right? You're going to have periods where you don't feel like writing. You're going to have periods where you're like, not sure how to explore the emotional landscape of a scene. Or so I also feel like it's a book that people may come, I hope people would circle back to as they evolve as writers, because I think depending on where you're at in your writing journey, there will be different things that rise up in terms of what the lesson is in each chapter.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. We are at the quick fire portion of the podcast. And
All
so I've
right.
got a couple of questions for you. And some of them we touched on, but I like to put them all in the same place because I want to remind writers that everybody's journey is completely different. You ready?
Yes. Ready.
Okay. So, how long did it take you? You did answer this one, but need a reminder. How long did it take you from idea, I'm going to write a book, to publishing that first debut novel?
I did answer it. It took me 8 years to write it, but from the idea of the book till when it came out was 11 years.
Okay, and that's why I re-ask it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 11 years. And so a lot of that thinking time had kind
Yes.
of gone into it. And when there's not a lot you can do to make it, I mean, you can make it faster than 11 years, but there's not a lot you can do to compress it down when you have a really complex, really amazing story to tell. And how long did it take you to write Sit Right Here?
Not as long. It took me about 6 months to write the first draft. And then that's when I put together the proposal because nonfiction, as you know, you have to like go out and sell it as a proposal. But I did go ahead and write it because I wanted to know what the book was going to be. And I kind of figured I would just self-publish it anyway if I couldn't sell it traditionally. So I wrote it in about 6 months, then I sold it, and then I dug in on revising, which probably was another 6 months.
Amazing. And that does happen. People think it's because you learned how to write the book, but there's so much more. There are so many more reasons why it's faster.
Well, and I
And
also just felt like nonfiction is just, I don't know, my my bias is to fiction because I love to dig in and explore all the pathways and the emotional arcs. And nonfiction, it almost felt like a school assignment. I was like, here's the outline. I just got
oh
I mean,
no,
I've
you're
written
here to
so
promote
many.
that book.
Well, no,
Amazing.
but
It's
it's
a
true.
good book, I promise.
It is. It's not a school
But
assignment, I
it's a,
swear.
it
But
is
but
a
the
different
experience,
process. Yeah, it is
it's
a
a different
different process.
process.
Same where I do both, and so I can totally relate. It's a very different, and right now I'm also working on a nonfiction book, and so when I dream about going back to fiction soon,
Yeah.
it almost feels indulgent. It's very different.
It's
So
very different. Well, and the thing about the nonfiction, one of the reasons it didn't take me long is I have been writing about this as a coach, as a teacher, as a blogger. I mean, been blogging about this stuff for 12 years. So so much of I say it took me 6 months to write it. It was 6 months to like compile all my blog posts and my lectures and my things I had already written and make them work as one big piece.
okay, so here's a different question then. From the moment that you made the connection between mindfulness and your writing productivity,
Yeah.
how long was that until the book came out? Because that's when you started writing it.
That's
That's when you had
that
the
is an
first
interesting
idea that, oh
question.
my gosh, these things are connected, and
Yes.
started the process of putting that framework together. You did, whether
Started
you
writing
realized it.
about it, started coaching it. Yeah, that was 2019. when I realized it. And that was when I started the meditation teacher training program. And then to graduate that, I had to teach a class, which I taught as a mindful writing class. So I had to put together the class notes for all of that. So 2019 till book comes out 2026. So 7 years. All in.
Amazing. Okay. What was your first big break along the way where you were like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a writer? It stopped being a dream and you're like, this is real. What was your first big break that came your way?
Finding my agent was kind of a whirl. It was a whirlwind. So I met the man who would become my agent for the first book. He came to lecture when I was in grad school and I got his card. And then 8 years later, when I finished the book, I emailed him and I said, you won't remember me, but 8 years ago, you said that when my book was done, I could email you the first few pages. And here they are. And like an hour later was like, yeah, these are good. Send the book. I want to read it. And then 2 days later, he's like, I want to rep it. Let's go. So
Wow. So it was
that,
totally untraditional. And my experience with my agent was similar, but it's like you didn't even go through the query trenches,
yeah,
right?
I was ready. I
Um,
had like a list of agents. I
yeah,
had done all the research. I was ready to spend like a year
love
querying
that.
agents, and it happened in 1 week. And I was like
Sometimes
floating
when
on air. It was
yeah,
amazing.
that is a
Yeah.
big break. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, what is your best advice for writers who are just starting out?
Oh, that's such a good question. Writers who are just starting out, be kind to yourself. I think that's probably one of the most important things. Like, know that it really does not have to be perfect or even good when it first hits the page. You can edit a big old pile of poo into beautiful prose, but if you don't get it on the page, you got nothing to edit. So just put aside that perfectionism, put aside I mean, I always tell my writers, like, password protect it if you need to. Like, no one gets to see it until you're ready. Just let it pour out and then you can go back and make it good later and just keep learning as you go. I think all writers, and I'm sure you back me up on this, Susie, of like, we're always learning. We're always practicing our craft. We're always reading craft books and attending workshops. And like, I have a whole shelf of writing
Absolutely.
books. I love them. And I'm always
Absolutely.
learning new stuff.
And it's interesting you say that because I often get questions about like you went from working on, Wall Street to writing, and I don't understand that. And the thing is you don't, number one, you don't have to understand it. Thank you for your comment. But
Yeah.
number two, yeah, it's because we are always learning and changing. And in the first 20 years of my business executive career, I moved and shook and did all the things and changed careers or changed jobs like all the time because I was always looking for a new challenge. And I've been doing this a long time, and I can't imagine that I'm ever going to get bored
Yeah.
because we are always learning. I find it super fascinating. It's the reason that I have this podcast to bring to other people. And it's the reason when we were introduced, I was like, yes, come on the podcast. I need to talk to you because you've been doing some really deep thinking about what really helps writers. And that's what
Yeah.
this whole thing is all about is there's no one right way to write, and you've got to figure out so much more about your body and your mind and your intentions and things that people don't realize.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing to write a book.
And
So
everyone is a new challenge. I'm with you. Like, I love that. I think some
yeah,
people would find that frustrating that, like, oh, I wish there was a formula, but I love that there's not. Every time I have a new idea, I'm like, ooh, what's this one going to be like? Like, what's the structure? What's the
exactly.
POV? What's the.
Exactly. As you said, there are guidelines, and I try to break down complex things and put together, but you don't have to follow all of them. Do a few of
No.
them. You can't do everything. Do a few of them, and your book is going to be special because it's from you.
Yeah.
Um, Polish a few things that you resonate with and do those techniques really well, and the rest are going to work out. Okay.
Yeah.
This has been amazing. If we want to be part of your world, where can we find you and your book?
Yes. So I'm very findable. It's aprildavila.com. That's my home base for everything. I am on social. I mentioned to you, but I have this freebie that I do like to offer. It's called 7 Mindset Hacks for Big Writing Results. And it's a lot about like what we're talking about today. It's the mindfulness part of it. So if folks go to 7 mindset hacks.com, and that actually forwards to my website. So people can find it there, but we'll put it in the show notes.
Awesome and amazing. Yes, go grab that guide because even if maybe especially if you've never thought about this before, the connection between your state of mind and your intention and all of those things that go into being mindful, taking that pause that we talked about at the beginning of the show, especially if you've never thought about it, it might really just connect and take your writing in a whole new direction and make it really fun. So thanks so much, April. It's been awesome having you on the show. Come back anytime.
Thank you,
All the
Susie.
success on your launch. Thanks for tuning in to Show Don't Tell Writing with me, Susie Vidori. Help me continue to bring you the straight goods for that book you're writing or planning to write. Please consider subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Also visit susievidori.com/newsletter to hop on my weekly inspired writing newsletter list, where you'll stay inspired and be the first to know about upcoming training, events, and writing courses that happen in my community. If you're feeling brave, check the show notes and send us a page of your writing that isn't quite where you want it to be yet for our Show Don't Tell page review episodes. Remember, that book and your writing is going to open doors that you haven't even thought of yet, and I can't wait to help you make it the absolute best. If you're feeling called to write that book, keep going, and I'm going to be right here cheering you on. See you again next week.